Did you know that in times past, the Egyptians took their animals to court for trial? How about their invention of copper for birth control? Well, get ready, because in this video you'll discover some of the most mind-blowing things about ancient Egypt. Animal court cases. From actual records, ancient Egyptians had formal legal proceedings for trying animals that caused harm or damage. So if your pig destroyed someone's garden, or your ox injured a person, it would be brought before real judges in a real courtroom, just like a human defendant. Now, the trials followed the same structure as human court cases, meaning there would be formal accusations, evidence presented, and witnesses called to testify. Interestingly, the animal's owner wasn't technically on trial. The animal itself was considered the defendant. This was based on the Egyptian belief that all creatures were capable of making conscious decisions. In their worldview, animals could choose between right and wrong, just like humans. And according to their legal texts, animals were seen as being aware of their actions and could therefore be held accountable. So just like with humans, if an animal was found guilty, the punishment varies based on the crime. And while some were killed, others were exiled from the territory. In fact, records have been found of a goat being tried for entering a house and eating valuable scrolls, and several cases exist of pigs being put on trial for destroying crops. There are even documents showing trials of crocodiles that had attacked children near the Nile. Interestingly, the courtrooms where these trials took place were the same ones used for human trials. They were usually open-air spaces near temples or government buildings. Also, senior judicial officials, who were often priests, would preside over these cases, and they would wear the same formal regalia and use the same procedures as they did for human trials. But the detail in their record keeping is what makes it even more fascinating. Court scribes would know everything from the animal's description to witnesses' testimonies. They even recorded the animal's behavior during the trial, though it's hard to imagine a pig showing much interest in legal proceedings. Surprisingly, these animal trials weren't unique to any one period. They took place throughout ancient Egyptian history. From the Old Kingdom through to the late period, there is consistent evidence of these legal proceedings, showing how important it was in their justice system. Honey for money. Next, let's talk about the ancient Egyptians' obsession with honey. And trust me, they took it so seriously they must have had more than a sweet tooth. For the Egyptians, honey wasn't just food. It was literally liquid gold, and they valued it so much that they used it as a form of payment. Now imagine paying your taxes with jars of honey. Workers at the pyramids often received part of their wages in honey. And if you broke into a honey storage facility, well, you could face a death penalty because it was as serious as breaking into a bank. Through this obsession, the ancient Egyptians discovered something that modern science has confirmed. Honey has powerful antibacterial properties. They used it to treat all sorts of wounds and injuries. In fact, their medical texts, particularly the Edwin Smith Papyrus, have detailed instructions for honey-based treatments. And their soldiers would carry honey to battlefields to treat wounds, making them the first civilization to create battlefield first aid kits. But here's where it gets really interesting. Beekeeping in ancient Egypt was a serious business. In fact, the Egyptians were the first to figure out domesticated beekeeping around 2400 BCE. They built special clay hives and even loaded them onto boats to sail up and down the Nile following the flowering seasons. Talk about a mobile honey operation. Also, Egyptian doctors had over 500 different medical recipes using honey. They mixed it with everything from herbs to animal fats to create treatments for everything from stomach aches to even eye problems. Religious ceremonies couldn't happen without honey either. Priests used it in offerings to the gods, believing it had divine properties. They even had a goddess of honey named Neith, and the pharaohs would send honey as diplomatic gifts to other rulers. You could call it the ancient version of sending a fancy wine basket. The really wild part is that scientists studying ancient Egyptian honey preparation methods found that they had a sophisticated understanding of preservation. They would seal honey in special clay jars with specific techniques that kept it fresh for years. Surprisingly, some honey found in tombs was still preserved after more than 3,000 years, making it the world's oldest existing food. By the way, are you looking to change or advance your career seamlessly? Sign up with our partner for today, Course Careers. It features courses in IT, accounting, data analytics, software development, and more, taught by experts in each respective field. No degree required. They also assist with job hunting to help you land the best positions. Simply click on the link in the description to get started today. The best part, they offer free mini courses to help you determine if the career and course are the right fit for you. That said, back to the video. Sleeping on wood. In times past, the Egyptians used wooden headrests that looked more like torture devices than sleeping aids. Instead of soft, fluffy pillows, they used curved pieces of wood or even stone to rest their heads while sleeping. These headrests were called wares in ancient Egyptian and were basically wooden stands with a curved top piece that cradled the neck. Just picture a tiny wooden stool with a half-moon-shaped top. That's what they rested their heads on every night, and it was by choice. Also, the design of the headrest wasn't random. The curved part was carefully shaped to support the neck while keeping the head elevated off the ground. They came in different sizes because, well, not everyone's neck is the same size. Some were plain and practical, while others owned fancy versions, decorated with intricate carvings and religious symbols. But here's the fascinating part. These weren't just about physical comfort or discomfort, depending on how you look at it. It was that Egyptians believed evil spirits roamed at night, looking for sleeping victims. And according to their beliefs, these spirits could enter your body through your ears while you slept. So the headrest's job is to keep your head off the ground and make it harder for those sneaky spirits to get in. Now, the really wealthy Egyptians had their headrests made from expensive materials like alabaster and ivory. Some were even covered in gold leaf. But regardless of social status, everyone from pharaohs to farmers used them. In fact, thousands of these headrests have been found in tombs across Egypt, from simple wooden ones to elaborate pieces fit for royalty, showing that people were actually buried with them. This is because the Egyptians believed you'd need a decent night's sleep in the afterlife too. Also, research shows that these headrests were used as far back as the early dynastic period, around 3100 BCE, and they remained popular through the entire span of ancient Egyptian civilization. What is most remarkable is the craftsmanship that went into making these headrests. Woodworkers had to carefully shape the curved section to match the natural curve of the neck. This is because if it is too high or too low, you could wake up with a serious crick in your neck. Some even had adjustable pieces to fine-tune the height. The black eyeliner culture. The next weird habit we'll talk about is ancient Egyptian makeup, specifically their iconic black eyeliner that changed more than just their looks. Interestingly, both Egyptian men and women rocked this dramatic black eye makeup daily. They made it by grinding materials like galena and malachite into a fine powder, then mixing it with oil or fat to create a paste. Now, this wasn't just any old eyeliner. It was called kohl, and wearing it was serious business. You see, Egyptian summers were brutally hot, and eye diseases were a huge problem thanks to all the sand, sun, and flies along the Nile. The black eyeliner helped reduce sun glare from the intense Egyptian sun and made it easier to see in the bright desert environment. But what these ancient people didn't know is that they had accidentally created an antimicrobial makeup. Thousands of years before anyone even knew what bacteria were. Their fashionable eye makeup was basically ancient antibiotics. In recent times, scientists decided to take a closer look at these ancient makeup remnants found in tombs, and what they discovered was pretty mind-blowing. The minerals used in their eyeliner actually contained lead-based compounds that stimulated the production of nitric oxide in their skin. In plain English, it boosted their immune system against eye infections. The ancient Egyptians used small sticks and applicators, often made from wood or ivory, to paint the elaborate designs around their eyes. But unlike typical makeup, the application of this eyeliner was actually considered a religious ritual. Before putting it on, Egyptians would recite prayers to Horus, the god whose eyes were said to be the sun and moon, believing that the god would protect them through the eyeliner. Chemical analysis of ancient Egyptian kohl has shown it contained sophisticated compounds that would have taken significant skill to create. They had to heat and combine minerals in specific ways to get the right properties. So it wasn't just crushing up some rocks, it was complex chemistry, even if they didn't know it. The use of copper for contraception. The final weird thing about the ancient Egyptians we'll talk about is their use of copper for contraception. Well, it might make a lot of sense now, but having that knowledge thousands of years ago is a pretty big deal. Around 1850 BCE, when most civilizations were still figuring out basic farming, Egyptian doctors were busy writing detailed instructions about contraception in their medical papyri. These Egyptian doctors found out that copper had special properties that could prevent pregnancy, so they would shape small pieces of copper into pessaries for women to insert into their cervix. Surprisingly, they worked pretty well, making it an early form of the modern intrauterine devices. But here's where it gets even more serious. The Egyptians didn't stop at copper. Their medical texts, especially the famous Cahoon Papyrus, list several other contraceptive methods. They made vaginal suppositories by mixing honey with weird and sometimes gross ingredients like crocodile dung. Now, before you panic, the science behind the mixtures wasn't completely wrong. The fact is, these mixtures created an acidic environment that acted as a spermicide. Although I think we can all agree that copper option was probably a better choice for obvious reasons. What's truly remarkable is how close these Egyptian copper contraceptives are to modern IUDs. It's fascinating that today's copper IUDs work on basically the same principle, which is that copper ions create an environment that prevents pregnancy. But what is most surprising is that it took modern medicine until the 1960s to develop something that ancient Egyptians had figured out thousands of years earlier. That's it on 5 bizarre habits of ancient Egyptians. Even though I like to think of ancient Egypt as the Silicon Valley of modern technology, the weirdness of some of their practices is undeniable. If you enjoyed this video, do give it a thumbs up. Also, please like and subscribe to this channel if you haven't already. See you in the comments.